In this segment, we're going to be talking about the quote fantasy of Brexit. Brexit Britain is over. This an op-ed in the New York Times that someone wrote, Mr. Seymour. I found this picture here really funny. Don't know why, just looks great, so great. But anyways, it's about the Johnson era being over, but the turmoil continuing, because at the end of the day, Brexit is his legacy, despite what people say. Some people think he wasn't there long enough. He absolutely was, because it's not about how long you're there for, it's what you do in the meantime. It's what you do whilst you're there. And Johnson did a lot of damage, more damage than even Theresa May or David Cameron could have done. So, the Johnson era is over, the turmoil has just begun. For the third time in under a decade, a crisis at the top of the Tory party has ousted a sitting Prime Minister now. I don't think that's strictly true. David Cameron went of his own will because he realised he wasn't going to do well because of the fact that he's not a Brexiteer. Brexit absolutely got rid of Theresa May. The thing that got rid of Boris Johnson wasn't Brexit. It was the Pincher scandal in the end. It was all the multiple scandals he had kind of built up together. His predecessors had been brought down by Brexit. Johnson's reign was broken down by a series of crises, which is true, the Pincher one. Some, such as a chronic labour shortage and surging cost of living, were material, which is true. It wasn't that got rid of him. At the end of the day, I think ministers and MPs were just annoyed at having to tell lies to the public, to the media, and then being debunked within about a day, some within about 20 minutes. I think there was one in 20 minutes. Someone got debunked after going on television. That's crazy. And you look stupid as an MP. The media stop believing in you because you've just told them a pack of lies, and you've made them look stupid because they printed it and they put their name to those lies. So that's what happened in the end, I think. A string of defeats and miserable polling convinced Conservative lawmakers that Johnson's pulling power was at an end. And that's the key there, that they only got rid of him when they thought he wasn't an electoral asset. It wasn't for moralistic reasons, it was just for self-serving reasons. That's why they got rid of him. The two candidates vying to replace him are unlikely to offer anything better. You got Sunak and Truss are implicated directly or by association in the scandals that felled Johnson, which is true. Sunak obviously got fined at Partygate as well. More pressingly, neither displays any idea of how to cope with Britain's structural problems. Also true, when asked about the queues at Dover, they said it's not the fault of Brexit. Well, whose fault is it then? Because you blame the French, it's not really going to work, is it? Offering either a cut in taxes or in spending for the country, both options are bad. The chaos of recent months isn't going anywhere. They have no economic idea. Both of these people are economically illiterate, let's be honest here. If you have a GCSE in economics or an A-level, you'll do far better than these two, I'll be honest with you. For nearly 2 years after his election in December 2019, the country enjoyed an interlude of relative social peace and stability, political stability. I don't think that's true. I disagree with that. I don't think we've really had political stability. Johnson had a stonking majority, but I don't think we've had stability. Buoyed by its delivery of Brexit and a successful COVID-19 vaccination rollout, which, again, that's all marketing, the government enjoyed a substantial lead over a weak and demoralised Labour opposition, which is true, coming off the back of Corbyn, which obviously didn't go well, and Starmer being really plastic and boring, which he still is. It appeared that Britain, nourished by nationalism and an intervention state, was undergoing a revival. I don't know if it's true. I think it's just kind of, nourished by nationalism, but I think it was kind of, the country got kind of around itself in a crisis, if that makes sense. Kind of like, when there's a bad situation happening, you can either fall out with each other or kind of fall in line, and that's what kind of happened with Britain. He says no longer, which I love. It's like in Doctor when he says no more. Economically stagnant, socially fragmented, and politically adrift, the country is being cut down to size. Brexit fantasy of a revitalisation of Britain, freed from the shackles of Europe, which again is all marketing and Brexiteer jargon because it didn't happen. And I agree with the writer here; it's rubbish. And able once again to confidently assert itself at home and abroad is finished, which is true. I think slowly people are going to realise how bad Brexit is. It's going to take time, especially when there aren't enough people in the media talking about it. That's a key problem. The first was Johnson's address to the nation in March 23, declaring a national lockdown. The second was the Euro 2020 final, in which England stood a realistic chance of winning against Italy, which is true. Again, I don't think the England thing is super nationalistic. The kind of Brexit stuff I think was kind of right-wing, ugly, very ugly nationalism. I think the England stuff is more patriotism. There is a difference. Both broadcasts were watched by tens of millions of people. This briefly synthesised a moment of national unity. Both pretended to be a suspension of normality in the name of a national struggle, which is true, vaguely linked to the folk memories of World War II. I don't think you can really link the football to World War II, I'll be honest with you, in a sense. Maybe he's linking that kind of sense of national struggle to it. The eerie quiet of lockdown with its empty streets, visitations from wildlife, and ritual clapping for essential workers, which was just gross. Because at the end of the day, essential workers need a pay rise, not people to clap for them. This was matched by the flag bedraggled, drunk, and delirious mania of crowds roaming empty commercial streets, fervently chanting "It's coming home," which that happens every international tournament. I'll be honest with you, every international tournament, right? People convince themselves somehow that England's going to win and it's coming home, and then it doesn't. It's a meme. These were distinctly nationalist moments. I don't think the football stuff is nationalistic. I'll be honest with you. I think it's patriotic. Wrong, misplaced patriotism. But I think it's patriotism. Nationalism and patriotism, again, two different things. Tens of thousands of older Britons needlessly died in hospitals because of delays declaring lockdowns, and of course, hospital underfunding. NHS underfunding by the government. Food bank use rose to an all-time high of over 2.5 million people receiving packages, which, again, in what's meant to be the sixth richest nation in the world, that's ugly. That's so ugly. And we're going more onto the Brexit stuff. Fuel shortages created by a dearth of truck drivers. That was incredibly ugly, especially when you needed special licenses to drive around fuel tanks because they're very dangerous. In December, the first accounts of illegal parking in Downing Street were leaked. By February, rising energy prices were squeezing living standards. Food banks were overwhelmed by soaring demand, and of course a lack of supply as well, because businesses that could donate to food banks stopped doing so, because they need the stuff for themselves, and people who donate to food banks stopped doing so because, again, they needed the stuff themselves. Hospitals overstretched and underfunded struggled with a backlog of around 6 million patients, which again is a lot. We've gone over that as well, where waiting for a routine operation can take over a year, and that's average. Understaffed airports cancelling flights. Again, that's another thing that's happened. You got flight cancellations. You got baggage. People's baggage being lost more and more. And no one's working at these airports. It feels like they're massively understaffed. Johnson clung on for a while, but by midsummer it was over. The economy is heading towards an abysmal period. High energy prices, again, caused by price gouging typically by the energy producers. Runaway inflation, Brexit plays a large part in that, or at least a decent part in that. Struggling exports, that's more a Brexit thing. Rising interest rates, that's the Bank of England. In the words of the economist Duncan Weldon, a perfect storm. Neither approach from the Tory right or the Treasury would address the underlying causes of the cost of living crisis. Lacking ideas, the Conservatives are reverting to typical austerity, tax cuts, because that's all they know. In England, a wave of symbolically significant strikes at railways, call centres and airports, I didn't know call centre workers were striking, has broken out, offering some hope for workers who've seen their living standards fall over a decade. And this is where people are beginning to fight back here, and I praise them for it, I really do. Government approval was at an all-time low in 3 years, and neither political leader infuses the public. Tory Britain is unravelling, which I agree with. It is dying here, and this is the end of the Conservative kind of austerity agenda. I think it's going to come to an end, because I think people need to ask themselves in the UK, can we not live better lives than this? And the answer has to be yes. It was the dormant British nation of the post-war era, or at least the nostalgic memory of it, that Brexit was supposed to revive. That kind of nation that kind of did its best to move on past a very traumatic event. The exit of Johnson, Brexit's most charmed cheerleader, is it Johnson or would it be Farage? Marks the demise of the fantasy. In its place, unmistakable and unstinting comes crisis. And because it's only going to get worse from here. It's only going to get worse from here when it comes to Brexit stuff. The EU are taking us to court. It's been delayed, but I think the author of this is right. Not necessarily right. The fantasy of Brexit Britain is not necessarily over yet. It's not over yet, in my opinion. It will be over, I think, in a year or two. I think once we have more problems come to head and people can actually identify that, you're right, before Brexit it wasn't like this. That's going to be the key here. And again, people in the media have to do better. I can only do so much on a small channel talking about this stuff, but you have to do better. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.